$1 billion, that's not revenue, that's not investment, that's not innovation. That's how much money one of the largest energy companies in North America willingly lit on fire just to leave California. Not because they were losing money. Not because demand collapsed. Not because the refinery stopped working. They paid $1 billion for the privilege of walking away. And that single decision may have just rewritten the future of fuel, jobs, and prices in the most populous state in the country. This is not a political rant. This is not speculation. This is math, engineering, logistics, and regulatory reality colliding at full speed. Let's talk about what really happened. For decades, Valero Energy operated a massive refinery in Benicia, California. This facility wasn't new. It wasn't experimental. It wasn't fragile. It had been running through wars, recessions, oil shocks, environmental rules, and technological revolutions. 8 decades of continuous operation. It processed hundreds of thousands of barrels of crude oil every single day. Gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, the lifeblood of California's economy. This refinery alone supplied a significant chunk of the state's fuel. Not hypothetically. Not indirectly. Physically, every single day. And now it's shutting down. Not being sold. Not upgraded. Not converted. Shut down. And Valero didn't just walk away quietly. They paid an exit bill so large it stunned Wall Street. Let's be clear about what makes this story extraordinary. Companies shut down facilities all the time. Usually because they're unprofitable, or obsolete, or broken. This wasn't any of those things. This refinery worked. It had trained workers. It had infrastructure. It had supply contracts. It had customers lined up every day. And yet, after running the numbers, executives concluded that staying open would cost more than closing forever. So they chose the nuclear option. Think about that decision for a moment. Executives didn't just wake up and decide to abandon billions in infrastructure. This took board meetings, financial modeling, legal review, shareholder disclosures, SEC filings. They ran projections not for 1 year, but for decades. And the conclusion was brutal. California's operating environment had crossed a threshold where compliance costs grew faster than revenue, permanently. No efficiency gain could fix it. No technology upgrade could solve it. No future demand surge could offset it. The math broke. Here's where the scale really hits. The Benicia refinery processed roughly 170,000 barrels per day. That's millions of gallons of fuel flowing into California's economy daily. Remove that supply and the system doesn't gently adjust, it snaps. California doesn't have excess refining capacity sitting idle. It hasn't for years. In the early 1990s, the state had dozens of refineries. Today, only a handful remain. Every single one operates near maximum output. So when one disappears, there's nowhere to make up the difference. Now let's talk about the exit cost. This is where the $1 billion comes in. Valero didn't spend this money on innovation. They spent it on escape. Hundreds of millions were written off instantly because the refinery, once a valuable asset, became economically unusable. Employees were laid off. Contracts were terminated. Long-term supply agreements were unwound. Environmental cleanup obligations were triggered immediately: soil, groundwater, air systems. Monitoring equipment that must operate for decades after the last barrel is processed. Legal fees, administrative shutdown costs, site security, asset decommissioning. Add it all together, and the bill approaches 10 figures. This wasn't a theoretical loss. This was cash, charges, and liabilities booked in black and white. And here's the part that should alarm everyone. Valero didn't even try to sell the refinery. Because they already knew the answer. No buyer wanted it. Not a private equity firm. Not a foreign energy company. Not a competitor. Not a sovereign fund. A fully functional refinery, with pipelines, docks, tanks, and workforce, had zero takers. Why? Because buying it meant inheriting California's regulatory structure. And no one wanted that. This is where people often misunderstand the situation. They assume this is about environmental rules versus profits. It's not that simple. Valero operates under strict regulations all over the world, Europe, Canada, multiple US states. They know how to comply. They know how to adapt. But California's system isn't just strict, it's volatile. Costs don't just rise. They swing. And volatility is poison to capital-intensive industries. Take California's low-carbon fuel standard. Refiners must purchase credits based on how much fuel they produce. These credits trade on a market. Sounds manageable until you realize prices can triple in months. One quarter you're paying tens of millions. The next quarter it's hundreds. There is no cap, no stability, no long-term certainty. You can't plan billion-dollar infrastructure investments when your compliance cost behaves like a meme stock. Then there's cap and trade. Refineries must bid for emissions allowances at auctions. The state steadily reduces the number of allowances available. What happens when supply shrinks and demand stays constant? Prices explode. What once cost a few million per year now costs tens of millions, for the same emissions, the same output, the same facility. Nothing changed operationally. Only the regulatory math changed. Then came the breaking point. A new mandate required refineries to hold minimum fuel inventories determined by regulators. That sounds harmless, until you do the math. Meeting the requirement meant building new storage tanks costing hundreds of millions of dollars. Then filling those tanks with fuel, tying up hundreds of millions more in inventory. That's money sitting idle earning nothing while interest rates climb. Valero ran the numbers. 2 days after the rule passed, they announced the closure. That's not coincidence. That's cause and effect. If you're finding this breakdown useful so far, this is a good time to subscribe. These stories don't get covered deeply, and what's happening here affects every driver, household, and business in the country. Subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next, because the consequences are just getting started. Let's talk about jobs. When a refinery shuts down, it's not just a few executives affected. Hundreds of highly skilled workers lose their livelihoods overnight. Operators, engineers, maintenance technicians, safety specialists. These are not entry-level jobs. These are careers built over decades. And here's the harsh truth. Most of these jobs do not exist elsewhere in California anymore. So workers face a choice: leave the state or leave the industry. Many will relocate to Texas, Louisiana, or the Midwest where refineries are expanding, not closing. That's a talent drain that doesn't come back easily. Now look at the local economy. The refinery was one of the largest taxpayers in its city. When it shuts down, municipal budgets collapse. Public services shrink. Infrastructure projects stall. Schools feel the impact. Small businesses that depended on refinery workers, restaurants, shops, service companies, lose their customer base almost overnight. This isn't abstract economics. This is real money disappearing from real communities. But the biggest impact hits every driver in the state. Because gasoline doesn't magically appear at the pump. When local refining disappears, fuel must be imported. And California is uniquely difficult to supply. Why? Because it requires a special fuel blend that almost no other region uses. That means fuel can't just come from Texas or Arizona. It must come from specialized refineries overseas. Asia, India, the Middle East. That adds weeks of shipping time, massive transportation costs, insurance premiums, currency risk, and logistical bottlenecks. Every penny of that shows up at the pump. Ports weren't designed for this. Storage terminals weren't designed for this. Distribution networks weren't designed for this. California's fuel system evolved around local refining. Remove that foundation and everything downstream strains under the load. Tank farms fill up. Ships wait offshore. Trucks pile onto highways. And when anything goes wrong, whether labor disputes, mechanical failures, prices spike instantly. There is no buffer. This is why California gas prices already sit far above the national average. And this closure pushes that gap even wider. Analysts expect immediate increases. Not hypothetical. Not long-term. Immediate. And if another refinery experiences maintenance issues, or wildfire disruptions, or port congestion, brace yourself. Now zoom out. This isn't an isolated event. Other refinery operators are watching closely. Every executive sees the same spreadsheet Valero saw. Every boardroom is asking the same question: how long before we're next? Some companies are already reassessing their California operations. Others have frozen investments. Others are quietly planning exit strategies. No one announces these plans loudly until the decision is irreversible. Here's the most important point. California still consumes enormous amounts of fuel. Tens of millions of gallons every single day. Electric vehicles are growing, yes, but nowhere near fast enough to replace liquid fuel demand in the near term. Trucks, construction, agriculture, aviation, emergency services, all depend on refined petroleum. Shutting down supply without eliminating demand doesn't reduce consumption. It just raises prices. And this is where the billion-dollar exit becomes symbolic. Valero didn't leave because fuel wasn't needed. They left because producing it locally became structurally impossible. That's not a market failure. That's a policy failure. Even environmental cleanup tells a sobering story. And rebuilding this capacity someday. Almost impossible. Permitting a new refinery in California would take decades if it were allowed at all. Billions in capital. Years of lawsuits. Endless regulatory hurdles. No investor will touch it. Once capacity is gone, it's gone. This is why the decision matters beyond one company. When a profitable enterprise chooses $1 billion loss as the least bad option, it sends a message louder than any press release. It tells capital where not to go. And capital listens. The shutdown timeline is already accelerating. Workers are leaving early. Maintenance is minimized. Crude deliveries are winding down. A facility that once powered the region is slowly powering off. And once the final valve closes, there is no restart button. California now faces a simple equation. Demand remains. Supply shrinks. Prices must rise, or shortages occur. There is no third option. This is not about ideology. It's about physics, logistics, and accounting. Fuel must be refined somewhere. It must be transported somehow. And someone must pay for it. In this case, that someone is you. $1 billion was the price of exit. The real cost will be paid at the pump, every day, for years to come. If you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, stories that connect policy, industry, and real-world consequences, subscribe to the channel now. Because what's happening here isn't over. This was just the first domino. And the next ones are already wobbling.